What's happening over there in Doha?
All
Are you
good.
in
Getting
Doha?
I am in Doha. I
Yeah.
am
Yeah.
indeed. It's getting incrementally hot, but so far so good. We have Ramadan, which they
Yeah.
take very seriously here. So everything is closed during the day.
Wow.
Yeah. You don't have the
Wow.
same
Wow.
in Egypt? Okay. Yeah.
No,
They don't.
you can, yeah. Sorry, go on, yeah.
No, they don't do that in Dubai either, but here in Doha it's nationwide. So it's nationwide. So we're all in
Wow.
this together.
Wow. And are you fasting or what are you
I'm
doing?
not, I'm not,
Okay.
but my colleagues are. And then
Mm.
some days we do like a fast together, just a solidarity fast.
Oh, really?
Yeah. just to see what it feels like. So your class is
Yeah.
actually in 10 minutes, is that right?
Yeah. Sure. Yeah.
Okay, cool. All right, so I'm just gonna go get some water. I'm gonna turn off my video, and
Yeah,
I'll be back
sure.
in a few minutes.
Cool. Okay. Okay.
All right,
Yeah,
good
it
to see
should
you,
be
Ronnie.
just like, 20 minutes or something, really. It's not going to be,
Sounds good. Sounds
yeah,
good. Well, I'm
that's
free. I'm free. All
okay.
right.
Thank you.
Am I a bit dark?
You are a bit dark, yeah.
Try to turn on some lights. How's that? It's better, is that?
Yeah, that's nicer. Yeah. So I think the students are no, there's only one student here. But anyway, maybe I'll just kind of ask you some stuff about the film that
Sure, yeah.
interests me. So I mean, I was wondering, what is the kind of origin of the story? Because I know you're a writer and you're a poet as well. So is this a fiction that you've put together yourself? And then how closely does it resemble Sudanese culture, and how do you go about researching that?
Yeah, I don't think anything is ever fiction, no matter how far away it is from your daily lives. But it's inspired by my own life. It's inspired by my family life in Sudan. So I grew up in Sudan until I was a teenager, about the age of this young girl. And so for me, my life is always frozen in time. Like Sudan for me was a time where I will forever be a teenage girl in Sudan. And I've never experienced Sudan as an adult, apart from going back to make films or going for holidays or short periods of time. So it is inspired by my own life. Even though we did not live in the cotton farming area of Sudan, we would visit regularly and we'd have family who had farms and we would play in the fields. So all of those elements together was really, really inspired by my own life.
Okay. And I mean, the film takes on, a number of themes, but the kind of central issue is this arranged marriage, but which also then brings in this kind of clash between modernity and traditional life and these traditional cultural values that also are, somewhat problematic as well. So I presume from what you've just told us about your own personal life, that in a way you're it's autobiographical. So in a way, would the film be like a sort of auto fiction for you?
I mean, yes and no. It's like I always say that a documentary is never fully a reality. Documentary always has fictional elements because you have someone shaping and directing and shepherding a story. So in the same way that documentary is never fully reality, fiction is never fully fiction, right? So I think it's something in between both. And as the writer and director, I think it makes a big difference if you're the writer and director. If I was just the director and someone else had written the story, then I would have a very different approach to it. But because I am the writer-director, I see it, I feel it, I lived it, I bring a very personal touch to the film as well.
Yeah, okay. Well, that's a super interesting point about documentary, because I think I was just reading about this, like the person who sort of came up with that word first was a guy called John Grierson in England. And he was writing in 1930, I think, and he was writing about, O'Flaherty, Robert O'Flaherty. He made a film about an Inuit Nanook of the North, right?
Yes,
Which is one of the first ever documentaries. And Grierson called documentary, he called it the creative treatment of actuality. So he actually, so somewhere along the line, like we've sort of lost this connection that actually documentary is a construction just as fiction is a construction. But anyway, maybe, I mean, I could talk to you all day, as you probably know. But I really just want to encourage the students. We've now got 12, so that's almost a full class. We haven't got a big class, thankfully. So anyway, Susie, thank you for joining us. We're all here now today. We watched your film last week. We discussed it on Monday a little bit, and the students were really taken with it and connected with them. I'd like to offer the floor to anyone who's there to share the screen, or sorry, to open their camera and actually ask Susie a question about her film. Also, the other part, I was just going to say, we're also doing an assignment on this, so there'll be some film reviews produced.
I would just love to say thank you very much, everyone, for watching the film, first of all, and for being here today. As a filmmaker, visuals are extremely important to me, and so I would love to see your faces, whoever is comfortable, so we can have an actual face-to-face conversation. So whoever would like to turn on their cameras, that would be amazing for me as a filmmaker to visualize who you are and to see who you are. Other than that, voice is fine as well, but please ask me anything you like, and I'm happy to. And I know that you in Egypt also have a very, very strong and long history of cotton and cotton industry and cotton farming and British colonialism. So there's a lot that we can talk about that we have in common between Egypt and Sudan.
Yeah. Okay. So would anyone like to go first? Okay.
Hey,
there's
Aisha. Aisha.
Hi.
Okay.
Hi.
I wanted to dress up and everything, but then I slept. Sorry. I'm very happy to see you today because I really like the film. My question is that because we discussed this like in class so much, do you mean like by the old woman, do you mean like old women in Sudan or in the Arab region or in the world in general are the protectors of the patriarchy, or you mean that the Sudanese society is a matriarchal society? Because she was very like she was very protective for the traditions and everything.
Yeah. Yes. Sudan, and it depends, right? It depends on families, but there are some families, including my own, where Al-Habboba, this is what we call grandmother, Al-Habboba is extremely powerful, powerful symbolically. So she has symbolic power more than she has actual, physical or monetary or economic or any of that kind of stuff. And people will really listen to her. And so based on my own grandmother, power is something that is neither feminine nor masculine, right? So once you have a position of power, you can use it for good or evil or, in these terms, rather than saying something is patriarchal or matriarchal. Yes, she is a woman, but she's also controlling. And her control over the young girl is to control her in a traditional way, but also this is what I love about the Al-Sid character, is that she's very complex. And to this day, I'm the one who wrote her, and I'm still trying to figure her out because she exceeds my control, So I find her to be somebody who wants the best for her granddaughter, but in her way. So her final advice is, if you marry an old man and he will die, then you'll be free. That's her version of freedom.
Okay. Anybody else have a question, or do you have a follow-up question, Aisha?
Basant has a question.
Okay.
Thank you, Aisha, for your question. Hi, Fazant.
Hi.
How are you?
Actually, I had two questions, and you kind of touched upon it a while ago when you said that she actually wants, the first time I watched the movie, I thought that she actually doesn't want to control her. She wants her to be free. She wants her to يعني it's kind of emancipating her. She told her, wait and marry. If you marry this man, you will be you will be controlled your whole life. But if you marry an old man and he dies, you'll be powerful like me. I never felt that that it is patriarchal, and that's how I see it. And the second point is actually a question from the visual elements that appeared, and it caught my eye, the sugar and the ants. And when when her father, the girl's father told her, don't put too much sugar in the tea because Ilset has she's under diabetes. She put too much sugar. That's because she has some kind of grudge against her. And at the same time, we see a close-up of the ants and the sugar. And at the end of the movie, the girl kills the ant. I want to know more about this camera element.
Yeah, I think you know the answer to it already, but it is exactly as you pointed out. We find out very early on that Ilset has sukari or diabetes, and she's not allowed sugar. And this is a very common lifestyle disease now in our part of the world, especially. I don't know about you guys in Egypt, but in Sudan, sugar is a problem. It's a problem. You know, they're drinking 5-6 spoons of sugar normally, and drinking 6-7 teas a day. So you can do the math in the amount of sugar that people are taking. So we find out early on that she's not allowed to have sugar. And then Nafisa plays with the ant. You know, she's gentle, she's kind. You know, we get this feeling that she wouldn't hurt an ant. You know, this expression when you say somebody wouldn't even hurt an ant. And later, this element is reversed, and we find that she's deliberately adding sugar in her grandmother's tea. This is a form of revenge. This, you know, she's not going to kill her on the spot, but it's just like, I am going to do a minimum amount of harm, which is what I can do in my power. But also she's giving Ilset what she wants. Ilset wants sugar. You know, it's like, I am giving you what you want. And then she kills the ant. So we have that reversal. We have the beginning. We see that shot, that element of care for the helpless, for something that is so small and so helpless, like she was. But now she is doing unto others as someone has done to her, which is to be brutal, basically, to actually just be brutal. Maybe brutal is a bit too harsh, but to stand up for herself. And not to be that innocent kind of like child anymore. I think it shows that coming of age. Thank you, Fasan.
Okay, that was a nice question. Can I ask just a little question, just because you touch on something that I think is very important. I mean, is just how when you're imagining a film, when you're writing the script in the first place, but then when you're imagining a narrative, how do you come up with these visual elements? You know that like you say, that it's so important the way that motif is repeated twice in the film to show the transition of the character, to show the character's development or change. How do you visualize those things, or how do you come up with those ideas?
Well, not in any kind of formulaic way, definitely not. So I know that there are rules to script writing, you know, especially formatting and so on, character and all that. And all that is a rule, and you can't get past that. You must write it in this way. In fact, the software won't allow you to write it in any other way. So you have very strict ways of writing the script, which is great because it means that we're all on the same page. And if we all want to write a script about different elements from different parts of the world, it doesn't matter. We are going to follow this formula in terms of format. In terms of content, I follow very few rules, very few. even though the first, second, and third act, you know, so they tell you, the first act is just establishing. And I think that comes naturally. When you're telling a story, you will naturally say, well, I went to the cafe, you know, you give a structure of where this story is taking place. And then the girl came, you know, I think we do this naturally, not as storytellers, but as people relaying a narrative to others. So the first act will be establishing, the second act will be kind of getting into the motivations of people and a bit of a climax, and then the resolution in the end. That's the normal structure of scripts, and it's the normal structure of life. You know, we're born, we go through our lives, we die. You know, that's the normal structure of life, and it's the normal structure of scripts. In terms of the elements of the story, exactly what you just pointed out about how to show something in the beginning and the end, I think that also comes naturally, because if you put yourself in her shoes, and which I often do with my characters, not just the main character, but other characters too, I always put myself in their place, because I want to make sure that this is a well-rounded character, and I'm not just giving everything to the main character and everyone else is just window dressing. It doesn't work that way. These are all people that in relation to others. So what I try to do is put myself in their shoes and think, okay, if I loved animals at this point in my life and everything was wonderful and rosy and I was innocent, and something happened to me where I could take my revenge out on something without necessarily burning the world down, what is it that I could do? What is a small act of revenge that I could do? And I think ants are pretty disposable in our lifetime. So things like that. It's just small elements of just visualizing what you would see when you put yourself in the character's position.
And just one sort of related question. How do you go about the process of imagining and writing all these things? Like, did you go to Sudan, or did you do it from somewhere different completely? Or how do you actually enter into that kind of mental space?
So my stories are often inspired by my childhood in Sudan. So I have those memories, I have those visuals already stored. I have a storage of that. But I don't think you necessarily need that to write a space opera, or a place that you've never been or you've never seen, or to have an imagination of a sci-fi. You know, I don't think you necessarily have to go to Argentina to be able to talk about Argentina, even though it would be extremely helpful and it would be extremely respectful of the people and the cultures there. So I wouldn't personally like to write a story about a place that I've never been to, because I think there's a greater visual that you can bring, there's a greater beauty that you can bring by understanding the place and the culture. So yes, for me, it comes directly, but it doesn't disbar you from writing about things that you don't know. You just have to be respectful about it.
Okay, all right, thanks. Is there anyone else in the class here that would like to ask a question, has something they're curious about?
Sama.
Hello.
Hi. Is it
Really
Sama or
nice to
Sama?
meet you. Sama.
Sama.
Okay, so I have a question about the kind of problems that you faced while filming. So like restrictions from the government, stuff like that.
Yeah, well, luckily when I went to shoot the film, it was just after the revolution. So it was a very, very cool period in Sudan's history. You know, the arts were, you know, come make films, come, you know, it was very open at the time. Not so much anymore. But at the time we felt very comfortable. So we didn't have any restrictions. We really didn't. And because it's a short film and it's a small budget, no one really cared about us too much. If you're coming with a huge crew and $1 million budget, maybe that would be different. But we were kind of like, not really, nobody really bothered us. But the problems were industry related. There is no industry. You know, you guys in Egypt you're our northern neighbors, and yet you have like the most fabulous film industry in the whole of the region. We don't have a film industry. And so that part was difficult, just trying to get people to understand what we were doing, trying to get the communities to understand what we were doing. They all thought we were making a musalsal or an ad, a commercial, you know, just to say that we're making a short film. What's that? What does that mean? You know, so there was a lot of explaining to do in a good way. You know, there was a lot of curiosity. And then electricity and internet. So the normal daily problems of Sudan were the normal daily problems of shooting the film. But we got around it. We added some extra shooting days sometimes. We took it easy. Like, I think that was the key point, is because I worked with a 99% local crew who had worked on commercials before. I have to say they were very professional. So it's not a matter of not having professionals. We had extreme professionals on board. It was just a matter of taking a mindset out of commercial and putting it into art. You know, we're making an art film. But in general, I think we really had to have patience. That was my key. It's like things will go wrong normally on any film shoot, but we don't have a and because I was the producer also, I was able to say, like, listen, guys, I'm not holding anyone to a huge deadline. Like, we add another couple of shooting days, no problem, you know? And because it was a small budget, it was very doable.
Okay,
Thank you
so
so
much.
Aisha?
Yes, I wanted to wait. I wanted to add also two questions. Okay, so I realized that Sudan doesn't have this huge film industry, or I mean, I watched this movie تموت ستموت
تموت بالعشرين.
Yes. But I understand that it's not common to have Sudanese movies. But the cast was very great. So I especially like the old woman. How did you find these people? Is she like famous actress, old one? This is my first question. The other one is I'm actually Yemeni. I'm not Egyptian. So we also have this complication in Yemen. You don't. I don't know, but I think the Sudanese are more like open than Yemenis. So they, like in Yemen, usually they tend to make movies about rural areas because they have a huge problem with women being in the cities. So the director have a problem with actually shooting a woman in the city. So she will be usually hijabi or niqabi or whatever. So if he if he take a non-hijabi woman, that will cause a huge problem. If he took that hijabi woman even inside the house, that's also a problem. But in the rural areas, people are usually like using these muhtashim dresses or like modest dresses. That's why we have like huge amount of movies and shows in the rural areas. So did you want to is that part of the problem? Is that like that, or you wanted actually to make a movie in this?
That's a great question, actually, and I didn't know that about Yemen. So I will take a new look at any Yemeni films that I see, because we don't realize that. We don't realize the politics behind filmmaking sometimes. Regarding your first question about actors, we do not have a film industry in Sudan. We have small pockets of light that shine through every few years. We had films in the 70s. The 70s was kind of like the heyday of Sudanese filmmaking. And then we had successive governments that weren't interested in the arts. So it was only more recently in 2019, 2018, 2019 specifically, where we had like, bam, ستموت في العشرين, حديث عن الأشجار, خرطوم Offside. We had 3 feature-length films in competition in major film festivals at the same time. And we were all holding our seats going like, what the hell's going on here? What's going, where did all of this come from? It was a beautiful coincidence. So these people weren't working together. They didn't know about each other. They would just happen to be 3 Sudanese filmmakers making films at the same time, which really gave a push for we don't have an industry. It gave a push for the creation of the industry, because they were like, how can all these beautiful films come out of nowhere? And by nowhere, I don't mean nowhere. I mean like without support, without industry support, without government support, without grants or anything like that. So my actors, anyone below the age of 40 in this film is first-time actor. First time ever. Anyone above the age of 40 is theater. So they are theater actors. They are not film actors. So there was a lot of work to be done with the theater actors to transform their roles into film. And you know, the difference between theater and film is huge. So all of these actors, it was like, please don't jump up and down. Don't move your arms. Don't, you know, so there was a lot of, it was actually as much direction for the actors, the theater actors, as it was for the new actors or the people who have never acted before. But it was a beautiful, beautiful bridge, I think, between the two. It was a beautiful bridge between someone who has never acted before and someone who's acted all their lives in a different way to kind of find that middle ground. Yes, so the younger actors have never acted before. And in fact, related to your second question about social sensibilities and why people make films the way they do, my film was always set in a rural area. That's got nothing to do with filmmaking. But I will think twice now about how I do things, because we actually shot most of this film in Khartoum, which is the capital city. Only the cotton scenes were shot outside, and the Hush, the indoor scenes, the street scenes, for a very weird reason. And I mean, I laughed when I heard about it. So when we went to look for the villages, in the actual villages, the villages were more developed than Khartoum. The villagers, because a lot of over the years, the cotton industry has gone down. A lot of the young men now work in Saudi Arabia, work in Dubai, work in Qatar, send money back. They build their houses. So now the houses are actually fancier than the outskirts of Khartoum. So we actually shot in Khartoum. So it's kind of a reversal of what you were talking about with Yemen. However, one of our main problems was that we would shoot all day, and then the young girls would go home at like 2 a.m. or 3 a.m. and the neighborhood got upset. So it wasn't the government, it was actual neighborhoods saying, why are your daughters coming home at 2 a.m. and 3 a.m.? And the family is trying to explain to them that they're making a film. They're like, what's the film got to, so it turned into a conversation, which I think is really, really the way to start, because you have to have these conversations. It can't just be that you hide somewhere and make a film and then come back. It needs to be part of the society. Thank you for your excellent question.
Yeah, thank you. Sama, are you got your hand up?
Yeah, I have a question. About Nafisa, she didn't say a word throughout the whole movie. So was that intended to like support the idea of show don't tell, or was it in her personality?
It was definitely deliberate, definitely, because I wanted to show how a girl has no voice, literally and metaphorically, right? So she has no voice, and yet you understand her fully, right? You understand her story, you understand her struggle, and yet she doesn't speak, she doesn't say a word. I'm actually developing my first feature right now, which is based on El Cid. So El Cid was a proof of concept. I didn't have enough money to make a feature a few years ago, and I didn't have enough crew or cast or support or producers or anything. So I decided to make the short as a proof of concept, but in the feature, she talks. So this is like the main difference now. And I kind of like the silence a little bit, because I think it's very powerful. When someone tells you exactly what they want, you don't get the full picture. I think you don't get the full picture when someone actually tells you something in a strange way.
I have another question about the Cid. She had like signs on her face.
Yes.
More case. So was that like a symbol for something?
It's very common in Sudan. They don't do it anymore. It's very common in Sudan for women and some men also, to have the shiluch, they call it shiluch. So it's 3 scars down each cheek and sometimes on the temples as well. It's a razor blade that is used to the cheeks and then filled with some healing herbs and so on, when they're very young, when they're around, like before puberty, around 8 or 9 years old. My grandmother had it, my aunts had it, my older aunts had it, but they don't do it anymore. It's very common. It used to be a tribal, like going way back, it was a tribal identification, but then it became a sign of beauty. So if you didn't have the 3 shiluch, then you were less likely to get married.
Wow.
That's very interesting. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
actually, just on that, there's actually a shot of El Cid, and then the camera kind of moves on to an old photograph on a
Mhm.
wall. So
Mhm.
is that El Cid when she was younger with her husband?
Yes.
Is that, yeah.
Yes.
And
yes.
I couldn't really see if she had the marks on her face or not, but we were
She
trying to
didn't.
discuss. Yeah.
She hadn't had the marks on her face. However, she does have a big birthmark, which is what the actor has, a big black birthmark. So we just recreated the birthmark on the young girl in the photograph, but she doesn't actually have the shiluch.
Yeah. Okay. Maybe you could tell us a little bit about the feature you're going to, what the kind of relationship is between the short and the feature, and when that is going to be, and so forth.
Yeah, the feature I hope to make this year. So when I made the short, I literally didn't have any support, right? I applied for 1 film grant, which I got, and then I begged my family for money. These were the two sources of income I had, which is not a good way to make a film when you owe your family money. But I had nothing, and I just thought, okay, you know what? I'm not ready to make the feature with nothing, so let me take a chapter of the feature. So this is a chapter. This is 1 scene, in fact, from the feature, which is him coming to ask the young man coming to ask El Cid's permission to marry. And I thought that was a very powerful scene, and it's one of the climactic scenes of the feature, even though it's not the denouement, it's not the end of the film. Just to kind of bring in all the elements that I want to talk about, which is the cotton and the change and the tradition and the modernity and so I thought that 1 scene really encapsulated all the stories that I wanted to tell. So now I get the time to really flesh it out and to really bring in my magical realism style, which I love very much. And so this comes a lot more in the feature as well. Hope to shoot it this year.
Okay. Yeah, and could you give us an idea of what the kind of production of that short film is? Like, what's the kind of, like you talked about shooting days and so forth, just in a general sense, what's the, I guess, the duration of the shooting days, what's the post-production, and what's the kind of budget and personnel involved in something like that?
Are you talking about the short or the feature?
The short. Well, you could do both if you want, but it's
yes.
Just to get a kind of...
The short was, okay, so the short was almost exactly $20,000 to produce, like to shoot, to pay people, to, everything was $20,000. And we made sure, because that's all I had. I had 10,000 grant from the Doha Film Institute and 10,000 I raised myself. So that's all we had, and that's what we were working with. It was a 9-day shoot. Originally, it was supposed to be 7 days, but we added a couple of days. So it was a 9-day shoot. And the whole thing from start to finish on the ground in Sudan took 6 weeks. So within 6 weeks, and it was my Christmas holidays, because I actually have a full-time job. So I work 9 to 5. And so to make this film, I didn't necessarily want to quit my job. I decided to make it on my Christmas holidays. So you can do it. You can have it all. You can actually make a film and still have a paid salary as well. Other than that, there was 30 people involved, 30. That's all the actors and the cast and the crew and everyone, which is not, it's not a small crew. It's not a big crew either. It's very manageable. And then because I was the producer and the distributor and all that fun stuff, after the fact, we edited it was lockdown when we started editing. So we had the luxury of time, because most of the film festivals had folded or closed or postponed, or so we said, you know what, let's take our time with the editing. So I was editing with the local editor here. I mean, he's Sudanese, his name's Qata, but he lives here. And so that was a very nice process to be very close to your editor all the time. And then I distributed the film myself. I sent it to something like 600 film festivals. And it got accepted to 200.
Wow. And how did you get it into Netflix, and what's their involvement in the feature?
So, so my distributor for the Arab world, so I distributed for the rest of the world, and my distributor for the Arab world is Mad Solutions, who are Egyptian. They're actually based in Cairo, and they are the ones who proposed the film to Netflix Middle East. So it's not Netflix International, it's Netflix Middle East specifically. So it's great to have a regional distributor that knows the lay of the land. So I didn't have anything personal to do with it, but I'm lucky to have these distributors.
And then what's the Netflix involvement in the feature? Or I think you mentioned there was one, but yeah.
We're not 100% sure yet, still in talks, because they love the short so much. We're talking about what kind of involvement to have in the feature. So there's a lot of talking, by the way, in film production.
Yeah. So you've already got the script, right? You've written the whole script for the feature.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
I have the script and most of the funds right now. So it's just a question of putting together the cast and the crew.
Right. Okay. Oh, I see a hand up by Mena. So maybe Mena, go ahead, please.
Hi, I'm so happy you're with us today.
Thank you.
I'd like to ask you a couple of questions. Like, how was the process of scripting, and how did it start from the beginning? And another thing is that, do you believe in the auteur theory?
In the auteur theory?
Yes.
Which particular auteur theory?
The one that says that the film is a byproduct of the author or director.
Yeah, that's for sure. Yeah, that's for sure. So remind me your first question.
Oh, yes. How was the scripting process? How did it start?
Oh, scripting. Yeah, so this is very related to your second question as well. So if you're talking about whether a person puts their personal life into the script, then that's very much yes. We actually had this conversation early on today, maybe before a lot of you joined, but it definitely comes from my autobiography, even though it's not autobiographical in that sense. It definitely comes from me as an author. And script writing for me is like storytelling, and it's like short story writing. So I'm a writer also, and I see very little difference between writing a short story and writing a script. I think the two of them are very easily interchangeable. It depends on what you like. Some people are very visual, right? So they like to think of how to visualize something, and then they have a lot of difficulty with text. I prefer text, to be honest. This is where I start. I always start with text. If you're a more creative, kind of experimental filmmaker, then you'll probably go straight for the visuals. I'm lucky to work with very great cinematographers and DOPs that we can then work on the visuals together. So I have a vision in my head. This is what I have, but then to translate that with lights and, to really put it in a way that that is appealing, is something that I need to work with a cinematographer to do. So basically, I give the cinematographer the raw materials, and he or she will be able to shape it in that way that you see on El Sit, for example.
How many times did you edit the storyboard?
Oh my God, a lot, like really a lot. And I work on the script a lot. So right now, I've been writing the script for the feature for almost 3 years.
Oh my God.
It's a lot, yeah. It depends on your deadline as well, because my deadline was 3 years from when I started writing, then I have all that time to kind of, and I treat the script like a sculpture, right? So I'm there and I'm not changing everything. I'm changing words, I'm changing feelings, I'm changing things, small things here and there, just adding little flourishes. But I really think that without a foundation, without a good script, without a good foundation, then it doesn't matter how beautiful your visuals are, the story will suck.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mena.
Great. The story will suck. That's lovely.
Excuse my French, sorry.
Okay. Well, I think we'll let you go because we also need to kind of wrap up our almost end of semester, and our spring break starts tomorrow.
Oh, yay.
Yay.
Nice.
So,
well, thank you for spending your last evening with me. I'm very honored that you watched the film. I run an annual script writing workshop. So next time I hope you guys will apply as well.
Okay. Where do you do the workshop?
Well, so far I've only tried it once now online. It's online.
Oh, okay.
And then this year we did it for Sudanese women script writers. And next year I hope to open it up for Arab women script writers.
Wow, that's great. Okay, well, listen,
Lovely.
best of luck with
Thank
your feature production. And again, thank you for joining us. Very generous of you to take your time out from your busy
Thank you.
schedule, from your job and your
appreciate it.
film career.
Not at all. I appreciate it very much.
jobbing.
Someone asked me there in the chat for
Oh,
more details
sorry.
about the workshop. It won't be until a few months' time, so I don't even have the details myself. But once I do, then please follow me on Instagram. It's my full name, Suzannah Mirghani, and then I'll be posting about it. But thank you, Professor Close, and everyone else.